Tears of the Kingdom. What a game. But for real, other than my adulthood responsibilities, this is basically what I've been spending all my free time on since it came out, much like the rest of the world, quite frankly. The game is amazing. Of course, you don't need me to tell you that. I'm pretty sure this is one of the highest rated games of all time as of right now, which is quite frankly wild, but I definitely see why it is. This game is quite special. So I just wanted to compile a quick video to give my thoughts on the game, some of the cool new things within it, what I liked about it, and just all the cool stuff that this game's got going on. This video will be very different from my last two videos, where those last two were pretty heavily scripted and edited. This one will be more free base, essentially. No real script. I just have some notes that I'm going to talk over, essentially, and just explain why I think this game is amazing. To start, this game is basically fresh in quotation marks, fresh off the heels of Breath of the Wild, which had come out 6 years prior. And I know that people going into this game will already have some negative opinions about it because Breath of the Wild, at least to some detractors, say that it strayed too far from that Zelda formula. And quite frankly, I can see where they're coming from. But even with those changes, I believe that game to be very fun and easily one of the best in the Switch's repertoire. And I have played it a bunch since it had came out 6 years ago. Funnily enough, it seems like Nintendo did at least underhear some of those complaints because they have gone and added a bunch of the staples from the series into this game. But we will talk about those as we go along. So please come along with me as I go over my thoughts, feelings, notes, and some other cool stuff about this game. To quickly address an elephant in the room, just to get this out of the way before we move on to the rest of this. Yes, the frame rate in this game does drop below 30 FPS a few times, mainly when the combat gets a little crazy, or if there's just a lot happening on the screen at once. But in my personal experience, it rarely happened, and it, like I said, it only happened when combat got a little too crazy, or if there was just a lot happening on the screen at once. It definitely didn't occur too often. But with all that preamble out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the game. And the game starts out with Zelda and Link going underneath Hyrule Castle to investigate a weird substance that is coming from underneath the castle called gloom. We'll get into gloom later, as it does play a very important part in this game. But you will notice right off the bat, Link is already quite beefed up. Quite the beefcake. Already has all his hearts. Stamina wheels fully maxed out. But no worries about that. That'll be going away pretty quickly. After some exposition about the Zonai people and the founding of Hyrule, you will encounter the big bad of the game, and you will be shot back down to 3 hearts, normal stamina wheel, the whole 9 yards, and you will be up in the sky. From here, you'll wake up on a sky island, naked, of course, once again, no clothes, but you will be on the Sky Islands, your first introduction to the Sky Islands, and a bit of the background on sort of what happened, and Link's new fancy arm. Now, I won't get too deep into the game here. The game just came out not too long ago, so I don't want to spoil any major story stuff or anything like that. I will now mainly jump onto the gameplay stuff and a lot of the cool new things that I've liked from this game so far. Starting off with, Ultra Hand, the new hand, and all the abilities that it gives you. Gone is the Sheikah Slate, replaced by the Pura Pad instead. So all the Sheikah Slate abilities from last game were gone. The Lock and Location one, the Magnetism one, the Ice Blocks, the Bombs, all that fun stuff. They have been replaced by these new abilities instead. These new abilities being Ultra Hand, which I will get to in a minute. There's quite frankly a lot you can do with Ultra Hand. Just know that it allows you to basically stick pieces of the world together, or logs to logs, metal crates to other metal crates, and all sorts of other crazy stuff. Quite frankly, there's a million opportunities with this new skill. As you've probably seen by quite a few of the videos of some people's crazy creations around the internet. There's also the fuse ability, which will allow you to fuse your weapon with anything, really. Sticks, boulders, other weapons, which is hilarious if you stick a spear and a spear together, and quite frankly, anything. It's not just weapons that you can stick these things to either. You can also stick them to shields and even to your arrows, because you can realistically fuse anything you want with arrows. The separate arrow types are gone as well. Ice arrows, fire arrows, bomb arrows, the electric arrows, which makes sense considering you can just add electric, fire, or ice items and fuse them with those arrows, thus kind of rendering the different elemental types for arrows kind of useless at this point. There's also an ascension ability, which will allow you to go through ceilings and roofs. Fun fact, this is a skill I forgot about the most. I would get stuck quite often and forget that I would need to ascension to get out of things. But very cool skill. There's also the recall feature, which allows you to move something back through time, which is also very useful for puzzles and also combat scenarios as well. Especially if an enemy throws something at you, you can kind of recall it to throw it back, which is very cool. All these new abilities are very fun to play with. There's also another ability that comes a little later in the game, but I won't be talking about that really. Just know that it is very handy and very helpful, especially if you are a builder type. But yeah, just like in Breath of the Wild, this beginning little area is sort of a tutorial setting where you get to play with a lot of these different tools, see how they work, see what puzzles you can solve with them, what puzzles will come up that will require these tools in order for you to be successful or to pass through them, and just like a bunch of different scenarios. Very similar to the Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild, but once you are done with this like little tutorial area, you will be able to jump off the Sky Island and land on the surface. Once you're on the surface, you're basically good to go wherever you want. However, I would strongly suggest going to the nearby outpost first in order to get the glider. That'll be very helpful on your adventure. But other than that, yeah, you're basically free to do whatever you want at this point. The story will sort of guide you along on what you should be doing. It'll give you nice little checkpoints on which areas of the map you should be going to. Essentially hitting the main story beats like it was in Breath of the Wild. Here's the 4 big areas that you should go visit and help them out. But, of course, you don't have to do that. You can realistically do whatever you want. Explore the world, find Korok seeds, just engage in combat, all that fun stuff. Something that you will notice pretty quickly is that it already feels like this world is a lot more populated than it was in the Breath of the Wild game, which, I mean, makes sense. After the calamity has gone away, they explain in the story that Hyrule has been rebuilding, which makes sense considering the state of it in Breath of the Wild. And with all these people comes a lot of side quests. Just like in Breath of the Wild, which I promise I will stop saying here shortly, gives you a lot to do in this game. All these side quests are pretty fun. A few of them are pretty like silly, easy little ones to do, but some of these new side quests are quite involved. I like side quests in Zelda quite a bit. Other than Breath of the Wild, Majora's Mask and Skyward Sword were also games that added a lot of side quests to them, and I always appreciate having extra stuff to do in these games, as I love to just get immersed in these worlds. But yeah, helping out the people of Hyrule is a super satisfying time, and the side quest rewards for it are pretty nice as well. Jumping into the combat, same fare as it was before, however, there is a lot more variety. Thanks to the fuse system. If you can think of fusing something to your weapon, you can do it. And not just your weapon, but your shield and your arrows as well. A lot of the monster parts have separate statuses or status effects or other just cool little things, considering they now are able to attach to anything you have in your arsenal. They also have a new stat called Fuse Attack Power, which essentially is how much more damage that weapon is now going to do with that monster part fused to it. But like I said, it's not just monster parts you can add to these things. You can add mushrooms, crates, boulders, anything really. If you can think about it more, 9 times out of 10 you're able to add it to it. And a lot of the extra little items even have like fun, quirky little side effects to them. Mushrooms have the ability to like launch enemies away, which is super cool to see. And it really just shows like the absolute depths of this combat system. I know key swings allow you to home on to targets with your arrows. Certain things you can add to your shield can make the shield grind on rails easier or give you a nice little aerial boost. Bombs or the explosive barrels as an example. Honestly, I can gush about the combat system in this game for a while, quite frankly. There's just so much cool things you can do in this one that you couldn't do before, and I just really appreciate just the amount of depth and variety this game adds with something so simple as just a new ability that you can use. But to sort of subvert off the combat, we have the enemies. So a lot of the enemies are all the enemies from Breath of the Wild Return: Bokoblins, Keese, Moblins, Wizrobes, Choo-Choos, Octoroks, Stalfos, and the Lynels, along with the different color system as well, like red, blues, basically determining how tough that enemy is. But there's also a slew of new enemies in this game as well, with some of the enemies being staple of the Zelda series already, like the likes and the Gibdos. And side note on them, Gibdos are pretty terrifying in this game, keeping up with their tradition, which was nice to see. But the new enemies, all the Guardian-like enemies, have been replaced with the new Zonai constructs that will heavily populate the new Sky regions. There are now the Aerokudas, a new flying foe, which makes sense considering how often you are in the sky in this one. Horriblins, which will populate caves. Pissed off trees, the Evermean trees, and the new boss Bokoblins. The very large Bokoblins that will be leading around other Bokoblins. And all the old mini-bosses return as well. The Hinox, Stone Taluses with new versions added, and the Moldugas, which are still found in the Gerudo Desert. But there's also new mini-bosses as well, in the form of the Flux Constructs. These enemies are usually found within the sky or in the depths, and are the large construct enemies that will require your new Ultra Hand and Recall abilities in order to take them down, which is nice. Nice to see those skills being used for mini-bosses. Frox, a new frog-like mini-boss found within the depths. And then there are Gleeoks populating the world now as well. And these guys are quite tough and will require a lot of prep work to take down. And it is super nice to see Gleeok kind of return back to the series like this. Going off the mini-bosses to the bosses, I won't spoil too much, but all the bosses are very unique and very fun to fight. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's a nice change of pace fighting all the Blights to actual, legitimate Zelda boss fights. No longer fighting different versions of Blight. All of them are actual, full-blown Zelda bosses that are very unique from one another, and it was very nice to see. And of course, we cannot finish talking about the enemies without talking about the infamous Blood Moon. This moon will show up periodically to respawn every enemy that was slain already. Jumping over from combat to traversal, a lot of the old staples are here still. Climbing on anything you would want, and your glider makes a return as well. But there is a lot of new cool stuff you could do with this new Ultra Hand ability. For example, I've seen plenty of people just make straight up cars, jets, air bikes, their own versions of gliders, all sorts of cool stuff, considering just how many items you can put together in this game. I've seen people make their own versions of Rivali's Gale using just a lot of pillars to sort of launch themselves very high up into the air. The rockets, you can boost, or you can add them to shields. You can add bombs to shields to sort of give you a lot of vertical height. All sorts of crazy stuff. And with all these new options, traversing the overworld is a lot more fascinating than it was before, as you can realistically traverse it however you want, in whatever fashion you want. Ultra Hand creations are also used in combat as well. I have seen a lot of jets with explosives on them, and I've seen a lot of heavy-duty vehicles used in combat as well. So the amount of traversal and the amount of things you can do with this new ability and the things you find in the overworld is super fascinating. And when it comes to looking for parts, they have new little Harrison setups around the world, which is just essentially parts like wheels and planks and just flat pieces of wood that allow you to really start building things that you can use to traverse the world with. There will also be these little gumball machines that'll give you Zonai items, things like fans, rockets, cooking pots, gliders, hot air balloons, flame constructs, thunder throwing constructs, cannons, batteries, the whole 9 yards. If you can think about it, chances are there is a Zonai construct for it. And you can add these to your Ultra Hand creations to sort of give them a little boost in either combat or movement speed or flight. And a lot of these items will be powered by your new battery meter that is goes along with your health and stamina bar. However, there are Zonite charges that will help keep your battery meter filled up. You can use these items to refill your battery so that way your Zonite constructs do not run out of charge before you want them to. You can also use these at the new bubblegum-like machines that'll spit out other Zonite constructs that you can use as well. Speaking of the battery, it is another bar essentially that you can increase throughout the game. And you can do this by getting little charges. Once you get 100 charges, you can add a new bar to your battery. In order to get these charges, you can give Zonite to the maker or the construction constructs in the air at forges spread out throughout the world that will give you these charges that you can add to increase your battery. And increasing your battery is something you're going to want to do, as some of the later game constructs can get quite demanding on your energy consumption. Zonite can also be used for other things later down the road, especially a new ability that you unlock later on in the game. Zonite can mainly be found in the depths area, which I will be getting into a little bit later, but that's where a majority of your Zonite will be found, along with a lot of other cool new things that are found in the depths. But overall, traversal in this game is truly fascinating, just with the amount of options you have to move around and explore the overworld and other parts of the world as well. It's truly amazing, quite frankly, how many options they're able to give you with something as simple as just one ability with the Ultra Hand. Moving from traversal to just the world itself, there's a lot of the Sky Islands that I mentioned earlier, very Skyward Sword-esque, that you can explore by launching yourself up into the sky. There's the surface, which is essentially the same overworld from Breath of the Wild, with a few tweaks and changes here and there, nothing too crazy. And then there's the new depths area. This area is, quite frankly, very cool. A very big surprise, and essentially doubles the overworld of this game, as it's essentially a mirror of the surface world. And one of the things you'll notice about the depths is that it is very dark. You will be needing to light up the area, the shrines in the surface, create routes down to the depths that will be used to light up the depth area. There's also new bright blooms that will help light up the area as well. And the depths area is just so cool. There's a lot to do here. There's a lot going on. There's new Colosseums. A lot of the old DLC items are down here. Just frankly, it's a very cool area. I don't want to spoil too much for anybody, but just know that this is easily one of my favorite parts about this game. Also in the depths, you will find items called Pose Souls. These little collectibles are found within the depths and can be traded in for items at certain vendors that are found within the depths and one on the surface. Speaking of the shrines, they do make a comeback in this game, and once again, there is a absolute lot of them. And instead of being the Guardian architecture, they have changed to the new Zonite architecture, which is very cool to see. And instead of Spirit Orbs, you are now getting Blessings of Light. Same concept, just a different name for the item. Take 4 of them to a shrine or to a statue, pray to the statue, and you're able to get some hearts or stamina. But, like before, there is one way to complete a shrine, the destined way to complete the shrine, and there's also 3 or 4 other ways to complete a shrine that are probably not what they intended you to do. Still, the absolute shining spot for these games is being able to do or figure out any sort of puzzle any way you want with the tools you are provided, whether that's in the shrine or outside the shrine, or using the stuff in the shrine in a way that was probably not intended. So that's still a very cool aspect of the game, and it's not just the shrines, but like mini puzzles in the overworld as well. There's an intended way to do it, and then there's the other ways you could do it. And of course, like before, all the shrines are varied and have their own puzzles to solve. They replace the combat mastery shrines where you have no weapons or clothing, and you're supposed to kill all the constructs inside without your preset gear. And there's also new training shrines that go a little bit deeper on some of the other extra combat mechanics in this game. But yeah, the shrines are still a very cool aspect of the game that gives you nice little puzzles to solve that can be quite a head scratcher, and they're nice that they came back for this one. Speaking of cool extra puzzles, the Koroks make a return as well to populate the Sky Islands, the surface, and the depths, sort of give you a lot more things to do as you traverse throughout the world. If you notice something in the distance that's a little weird or off, more than likely that's a Korok. Just like in Breath of the Wild, they populate the world and they give you little seeds that you can give it a Hest to, which will increase your weapon, shield, and bow pouches to help you carry more of those items. But instead of these little puzzles, you can also find them in the overworld now. You'll see them slumped over with their packs and asking for you to take them to their friend, which is usually off in the distance and will require some sort of Ultra Hand creation in order to get them there reliably. A very cool change up to the Koroks, and in this case, you get 2 Koroks because there's 2 of them instead of just the 1. Although I will say, with these new Ultra Hand creations came some very funny videos of people crucifying or burning or just in general making fun of the Koroks, since they're now in a mode where you can kind of carry them around and do whatever you want with them. Very, very funny to see. People just torture these little guys. I never had an issue with them, but I can't get over just how funny that is. You will notice that the Guardians also do not populate the overworld anymore, which makes sense considering how the last game ended. But in their place came a much more terrifying enemy, in my opinion. The Gloom Hands, which will just kind of pop up out of nowhere and really kind of ruin your moment. Very terrifying enemy, but they definitely do keep you on your toes as you traverse through the world as well. Speaking of the Gloom in general, this is something that's mainly found within the depths. This is the sort of the new gunky stuff that's kind of covering the world, that's causing issues for everybody, making people sick, and it's actually a reason why all of the weapons are decayed. So there's now an accurate lore reason as to why all the weapons kind of break super easily. And it is kind of cool to get a reason as to why all these weapons are very brittle, quite frankly. Other things about the Gloom: if you get hit with it or get hit by an enemy that's covered in the Gloom, instead of losing hearts like you normally would, you will instead be locked out of your hearts as the Gloom sickness kind of infects you. In order to get your hearts back, you'll either have to eat items that cure that stuff or hang out on the surface. But if you're stuck in the depths, you will have to rely on the food or hitting up the light roots in order to cure yourself of that. And essentially that's the main gist about the Gloom. It's a very cool new mechanic that sort of keeps you on your toes as you explore the overworld. And that's really all the main bits I wanted to cover from the game in this video. Once again, don't want to get too deep into this, not to spoil anything since it just came out, not to go too deep into some of the cooler game mechanics. I do plan on covering this game more in depth when I do eventually reach this portion in my Zelda retrospective. That was delayed a little bit. I'm supposed to have already come out by this point, but that's okay. That'll come out shortly after this video. It's already voiced over and recorded, so I just need to edit it a bit and I'll put that up. But yeah, so here's a few cool little things that I found in the game that I thought were pretty interesting. The towers have come back. That'll essentially light up parts of the world on your map. And once again, some of you have little puzzles to solve while you try to figure out how to get inside of it to activate it. These towers also launch you up into the air now instead of just being another waypoint on your map, or essentially just take you to the top of a tower. This time they'll actually shoot you up into the air, which will allow you to get to the Sky Islands and also just be able to maneuver around the world a little easier. All the old armor sets are back from Breath of the Wild, barring one unfortunate exception, but considering how the story goes in this game, makes sense why it is no longer necessary to be here. But I do like how all the armor sets look, the old ones and even some of the new ones. And if you're unfamiliar, the armor set essentially gives you a nice little defense boost, along with another stat boost in some other field like heat resistance or giving you an attack boost. Yeah, all the armor is very cool looking, and I like experimenting with the different looks. Also, just a little FYI, there's an armor set that'll help you stick to walls even when it's raining. So that is super nice, and I recommend anybody to grab that. If you remember how frustrating it is to try to climb and then the rain starts, you'll know why. Cooking makes its way back in this game. It's basically stayed just about the same, although now a cute little thing, Link hums different tunes that are referenced to other songs found throughout the series while he cooks, which is a very cute touch. In terms of ingredients, some new things have been added, mainly like gloom resistant stuff or stuff that'll heal your gloom and stuff that'll help you stick to surfaces easier. The bomb abilities from Breath of the Wild are gone, so instead of having those, you can just find bombs in the world, which is very cool. Very, very similar to how it was in the previous Zelda games, where you just had a supply of bombs. The dungeons in this game are not just the divine beasts, but they are like full-blown Zelda dungeons, which was very nice as well. A very nice change of pace from the divine beasts, as I personally like these dungeons better. Just a hint for everybody out there, if you see bubble frogs, or these blue gigantic frog looking like creatures in caves, always take them down and grab their gems. They will be very useful down the road, especially if you want some extra bits of gear. The Yiga clan also make a return in this game as well, and are a lot more involved in the story this go around, which is very nice to see, considering their pretty limited involvement last go around, where they were really only an antagonistic force in the Gerudo Desert, and with the occasional spy every once in a while. And I think that's all I got. I know there are 100% things that I am missing, but like I said, I haven't gone through all of the game yet. I've gone through a good portion of it, but there are still some things that I need to do and experience and all that fun stuff. But I will say this game is quite frankly amazing. I can see where all the reviews are coming from. The freedom to explore, the combat, the story, everything. Everything is just so good in this game, and I'm just so excited that it was as good as it was. I was worried on a game trying to follow up Breath of the Wild, like how good that could possibly be, but they essentially took all the fun stuff from that and just cranked it up to 11. It's quite amazing what they have done with this game. So I would strongly recommend you play this game if you have not had the chance to do so yet. I know there are some detractors about this game not 100% following the old Zelda formula, which I understand, and the frame rate issue can be a sour point for some people, but those didn't really bug me too much as a huge Zelda fan, and I honestly didn't see a lot of the frame rate issues myself. Particularly only saw it when there was a lot going on the screen, which makes sense to me. But I don't think that should really stop you from playing this game. It is truly amazing. Like, Nintendo really hit it out of the park with this one, and I am very excited to see where they go next for the series. Now, if you will excuse me, I have some Tears of the Kingdom to play. Still, and probably for a while. Yeah. Oh, crap, I did forget something. Yeah, so everyone's also very hot. Not really super important, but I just wanted to make sure I threw that out there before I forgot. Yeah. Hello everyone, and thank you for watching my video on Tears of the Kingdom, my thoughts and impressions on it. Like I said in the video, this is going to be a part of my retrospective series when I get to these newer games in there. Missed the deadline a little bit, but that's okay. That video will be coming out very soon. So please keep an eye out for that, and do all the cool things they always ask you to do. Please like, comment, and subscribe. How are you liking Tears of the Kingdom so far? Please let me know down in the comments below. I've heard nothing but real praise for this game, so I expect to see that as well. But if you have some issues with it, or like what your overall thoughts on some game mechanics were, please let me know in the comments. And yeah, that's really all I got. Thank you for watching my video, and bye-bye.